All right, welcome back to our daily read aloud, My Side of the Mountain. The last time we stopped reading, something a little bit scary was going on. Hayden, get us started, then Abby's going to wrap it up after you. What was happening, Hayden?
Well, the falcon Frightful, she heard this weird loud sound that the boy couldn't hear, but then the police sirens came.
Okay, so they were hearing sirens approaching closer and closer. Frightful could hear it first, because birds have really good hearing. But then Sam could start hearing them, and then why did he think, wait, they're not coming for me? Why did he think that's probably not the case? Cadence? Okay, could be. He said, if they were coming for me, I don't think they'd have sirens blaring to warn me they were coming, right? They'd sneak up on me. And then right as he said that, the sirens all turned off at the foot of the mountain. So he's a little nervous. All right. Abby, do you need to add anything else that we read last chapter? No? Madeline?
Maybe it's because that one guy saw the fire.
Okay. It could still be from that fire warden. All right. And other than that, he's got 2 deer so far. So he has a deer, door on his tree. And he started his deer suit. So he has pants, right? No. Yes, he has pants, but no top. So he needs another deer. Okay. All right. So Frightful's freaking out, gripping her talons into his shoulder. Frightful was my ears as well as my eyes. She could hear things long before I. When she grew tense, I listened or looked. She was scared this time. She turned round and round on the log, looked up in the tree for a perch, lifted her wings to fly, and then stood still and listened. Then I heard it. A police siren sounded far down the road. The sound grew louder and louder, and I grew afraid. Then I said, "No, Frightful. If they are after me, there won't be a siren. They'll just slip up on me quietly." No sooner than I had said this than the sirens went down and apparently stopped on the road at the foot of the mountain. I got up to run to my tree, but had not gotten past the walnut before the patrol cars started up and screamed away. We started home, although it was not late in the afternoon. However, it was hot, and thunderheads were building up. I decided to take a swim in the spring and work on the moccasins I had cut out several days ago. With the squad car still on my mind, we slipped quietly into the hemlock forest. Once again, Frightful almost sent me through the crown of the forest by digging her talons into my shoulder. I looked at her. She was staring at our home. I looked too. Then I stopped, for I could make out the form of a man stretched between the sleeping house and the store tree. Any predictions on who this sleeping man could be? Hayden?
The poacher.
Okay, could be the poacher. Eric?
The person who was the fire person.
The fire warden came back?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not going to let Josiah predict because he's already ahead of us in the book.
He already predicted yesterday.
Okay. All right, let's find out. Softly, tree by tree, Frightful and I approached him. The man was asleep. I could have left and camped in the gorge again, but my enormous desire to see another human being overcame my fear of being discovered. Do you think he's getting a little bit lonely? Yeah, it's fun to be in the woods even when I go on hikes, but I will tell you, even after 1 week of being backpacked in the woods with just my husband, both of us are ready to get back to see people. It's kind of a weird feeling to see no humans for a long time. Lost my spot. Okay. We stood above the man. He did not move, so Frightful lost interest in my fellow being. She tried to hop to her stump and preen. I grabbed her leash, however, as I wanted to think before awakening him. Frightful flapped. I held her wings to her body as her flapping was noisy to me. Apparently, not so to the man. The man did not stir. It is hard to realize that the rustle of a falcon's wings is not much of a noise to a man from the city, because by now, one beat of her wings, and I would awaken from a sound sleep as if a gunshot had gone off. The stranger slept on. I realized how long I'd been in the mountains. Right at that moment, as I looked at his unshaven face, his close-cropped hair, his torn clothes, I thought of the police siren and put 2 and 2 together. An outlaw, I said to myself. What's an outlaw? Hudson?
A person who doesn't do the laws correctly.
Yeah, they're kind of running from the law, right? So if you're an outlaw, that means police are looking for you and you're living life on the edge trying to keep away. Madeline?
What if it's the positive?
Could be. Hudson? Or Eric?
Maybe they're doing drugs or something.
They could be doing something bad. Okay, so he's just looking at this guy. He doesn't look like he's all well put together, okay? So now, would you be a little more cautious of this strange man?
Yeah.
Okay. An outlaw, I said to myself. Wow, I had to think what to do with an outlaw before I awoke him. Would he be troublesome? Would he be mean? Should I go live in the gorge until he moved on? How I wanted to hear his voice, to tell him about the Baron and Jesse C. James, to say words out loud. I really did not want to hide from him. Besides, he might be hungry. I was thinking. Finally, I spoke. "Hi," I said. I was delighted to see him roll over, open his eyes, and look up. He seemed startled, so I reassured him. "It's all right. They've gone. If you don't tell on me, I won't tell on you." When he heard this, he sat up and seemed to relax. "Oh," he said. Then he leaned against the tree and added, "Thanks." He evidently was thinking this over, for he propped his head on his elbow and studied me closely. "You're a sight for sore eyes," he said and smiled. He had a nice smile. In fact, he looked nice and not like an outlaw at all. His eyes were very blue, and although tired, they did not look scared or hunted. However, I talked quickly before he could get up and run away. "I don't know anything about you, and I don't want to. You don't know anything about me, and don't want to. But you may stay here if you like. No one is going to find you here. Would you like some supper?" It was still early, but he looked hungry. "Do you have some?" "Yes, venison or rabbit." "Well, venison." His eyebrows puckered in question marks. I went to work. He arose, turned around and looked at his surroundings. He whistled softly when I kindled a spark with the flint and steel. I was now quite quick at this, and had a tidy fire blazing in a very few minutes. I was so used to myself doing this that it had not occurred to me that it would be interesting to a stranger. "Desdemondia," he said. I judged this to be some underworld phrase. At this moment, Frightful, who had been sitting quietly on her stump, began to preen. The outlaw jumped back when he saw that she was tied and said, "And who is this ferocious-looking character?" "That is Frightful. Don't be afraid. She's quite wonderful and gentle. She would be glad to catch you a rabbit for supper, if you would prefer that to venison." "Am I dreaming?" said the man. "I go to sleep by a campfire that looked like it was built by a Boy Scout, and I'm awakened in the middle of the 18th century. Why does he think he's gone back in time? What would make him think that? And I think he's making a joke, but why is he saying that? Hayden?
Because maybe he slept for like a really, really long time and sleptwalk.
Okay. So what about what he's looking at looks old? Noah?
Because like people didn't build it. This little kid built a fire, has a pet bird, and like built a house.
Is that what kids normally are doing these days?
Yeah.
Not much, right? Not much. So, I think he's shocked, okay? He's shocked to know this kid is on his own and he's surviving, right? That would be impressive. I crawled into the store tree to get the smoked venison and some cattail tubers. When I came out again, he was speechless. "My storehouse," I explained. "I see," he answered. From that moment on, he did not talk much. He just watched me. I was so busy cooking the best meal I could possibly get together that I didn't say much either. Later, I wrote down that menu, as it was excellent. Brown puffballs, so those are mushrooms, and deer fat with a little wild garlic. Fill pot with water, put venison in, boil. Wrap tubers and leaves and stick in coals. Cut up apples and boil in can with dogtooth violet bulbs. Raspberries to finish meal. When the meal was ready, I served it to the man in my nicest turtle shell. I had to whittle him a fork out of the crotch of a twig, as Jesse Coon James had gone off with all the others. He ate and ate and ate, and when he was done, he said, "May I call you Thorough?" Okay, Thorough. That's a poem by someone. Thoreau was a poet, and he lived in a cabin way out in the middle of the woods and wrote poems, and he lived by himself. So why would this guy want to call Sam Thoreau? Madeline?
Because he does the same exact thing, kind
Yeah, he's a kid kind of doing the same thing. That will do nicely, I said. Then I paused, just to let him know that I knew a little bit about him too. I smiled and said, I will call you Bando. What do you think Bando's short for? What can we think? Josiah?
Bandit.
Bandit. His eyebrows went up. He cocked his head, shrugged his shoulders, and answered, well, that's close enough. With this, he sat and thought. I felt I had offended him, so I spoke. I will be glad to help. I will teach you how to live off the land. It is very easy. No one will need to find you. His eyebrows gathered together again. This was characteristic of Bando when he was concerned, and so I was sorry I had mentioned his past. After all, outlaw or no outlaw, he was an adult, and I still felt unsure of myself around adults. I changed the subject. Let's get some sleep, I said. Where do you sleep? He asked. All this time, sitting and talking with me, and he had not seen the entrance to my tree. I was pleased. Then I beckoned, walked a few feet to the left, pushed back the deer hide door, and showed Bando my secret. Thorough, he said. You are quite wonderful. He went in. I lit the turtle candle for him. He explored, tried the bed, came out and shook his head until I thought it would roll off. We didn't say much more that night. I let him sleep on my bed. His feet hung off, but he was comfortable, he said. I stretched out by the fire. The ground was dry, the night was warm, and I could sleep on anything now. I got up early and had breakfast ready when Bando came stumbling out of the tree. We ate crayfish, and he really honestly seemed to like them. It takes a little time to acquire a taste for wild foods, so Bando surprised me the way he liked the menu. Of course, he was hungry, and that helped. That day we didn't talk much, just went over the mountain collecting foods. I wanted to dig up the tubers of the Solomon seal from a big garden of them on the other side of the gorge. We fished, we swam a little, and I told him I hoped to make a raft pretty soon, so I could float into deeper water and perhaps catch bigger fish. When Bando heard this, he took my axe and immediately began to cut young trees for this purpose. I watched him and said, You must have lived on a farm or something. At that moment a bird sang. The wood pewee, said Bando, stopping his work. He stepped into the woods seeking it. Now I was astonished. How would you know about a wood pewee in your business? I grew bold enough to ask. And just what do you think my business is? He said as I followed him. Well, you're not a minister. Right. And you're not a doctor or a lawyer. Correct. You're not a businessman or a sailor. No, I am not. Just 1 second, guys. All right, I'm back. All right, so Sam says, nor do you dig ditches. I do not. Well, yes. Suddenly, I wanted to know for sure, so I said it. You are a murderer or a thief or a racketeer, and you are hiding out. Bando stopped looking for the pewee. He turned and stared at me. At first, I was frightened. A bandit might do anything. But he wasn't mad, he was laughing. He had a good deep laugh, and it kept coming out of him. I smiled, then grinned, and then laughed with him. What's funny, Bando? I asked. I like that, he finally said. I like that a lot. The tickle deep inside him kept him chuckling. I had no more to say, so I ground my heel in the dirt while I waited for him to get over the fun and explain it all to me. Thorough, my friend. I am just a college English teacher, lost in the Catskills. I came out to hike around the woods, got completely lost yesterday, found your fire, and fell asleep beside it. I was hoping the scoutmaster and his troop would be back for supper and help me home. Oh, no. My comment. Then I laughed. You see, Bando, before I found you, I heard squad cars screaming up the road. Occasionally you read about bandits that hide out in the forest, and I was just so sure that you were someone they were looking for. We gave up the pewee and went back to the raft making, talking very fast now, and laughing a lot. He was fun. Then something sad occurred to me. Well, if you're not a bandit, will you have to go home very soon? And there's no point in teaching you how to fish and how to live on fish and bark and plants? I can stay a little while, he said. This is summer vacation. I must admit, I had not planned on eating crayfish on my vacation, but I am rather getting to like it. Maybe I can stay until your school opens, he went on. That's after Labor Day, isn't it? Do you think Sam had thought about school yet?
No.
We haven't heard anything about school, right? I was very still, thinking how to answer that. Bando sensed this. Then he turned to me with a big grin. You really mean you are going to try to winter it out here? I think I can. Well, he sat down, rubbed his forehead in his hands, and looked at me. Thoreau, I have led a varied life. Dishwasher, sax player, teacher. To me, it has been an interesting life. Just now, it seems very dull. Why do you think Bando thinks his life's dull now? Why is Sam's life something very different from his own? What do you think? Cadence?
Because he was at a camp and he didn't know that he was going to be able to stay there.
Okay. Do you, Josiah?
Yeah, so maybe he thinks now it'd be more fun to stay outside.
Yeah, maybe he's a little jealous. Like, man, this kid's getting quite an adventure, right? And he's never done this before. He sat a while with his head down, then looked up at the mountain and the rocks and the trees. I heard him sigh. Let's go fish. We can think about this another day. That is how I came to know Bando. We became very good friends in the week or 10 days that he stayed with me, and he helped me a lot. We spent several days gathering white oak acorns and groundnuts, harvesting the blueberry crop, and smoking fish. We flew Frightful every day just for the pleasure of lying on our backs in the meadow and watching her mastery of the sky. I had lots of meat, so what she caught those days was all hers. It was a pleasant time, warm with occasional thunder showers, some of which we stayed out in. We talked about books. He did know a lot of books and could quote exciting things from them. One day, Bando went to town and came back with 5 pounds of sugar. I want to make blueberry jam, he announced. All those excellent berries and no jam. He worked 2 days on this. He knew how to make jam. He'd watched his pa make it in Mississippi, but we got stuck on what to put in it. I wrote this one night. All right, and I'm going to stop there. So the next few pages are them describing different projects they worked on, so that'll be a good place to start tomorrow. All right, thank you all for listening. I will see you later.